The Hoovers are one of the most infamous gangs in Los Angeles. I covered them in my first 2 episodes, so be sure to check those out if you haven't already. The gang consists of 8 different Hoover sets, including 5 deuce, 5-9, 7-4, 8 tray, 9 deuce, 9-4, 107, and 11 deuce Hoover. Unlike many other gangs, the Hoovers do not align with either the Bloods or the Crips. Originally part of the Crips, they later abandoned the affiliation and rebranded themselves as the Hoover Criminals a few decades ago. The only Hoover set that still claims Crip identity today is 5 deuce Hoover. One of their long-standing rivals is the 6 feet 5 inches Menlos. The Menlos represent their identity by wearing Milwaukee Brewers gear to symbolize the M for Menlo and use blue and yellow as their colors. The Menlos and Hoovers have been feuding for decades, particularly with the 7-4 and 8 tray Hoovers. However, their rivalry wasn't always this intense. The beef. The feud started in the 1980s and only intensified over time. After falling out with the Hoovers, the Menlos later joined the gangster Crip card. However, after an incident with the 8 tray gangsters, they left that card and later became neighborhood Crips. The Menlos are on good terms with the neighborhood Crips, especially hoods like 6 feet 7 inches. They have beef with gangs surrounding them, such as the Brims and the Hoovers. This rivalry dates back 4 decades, but I will cover events from almost 2 decades ago, leading up to 2011. October 21, 2003, a 6 feet 5 inches Menlo member was shot. It was believed to be by the Hoovers. An hour later, a woman named Vanetta was driving with her sons, daughters, and little cousins. They stopped at a light on 76th and Hoover. Vanetta's son noticed a car pulling up and recognized the driver. It was Nene, a 6 feet 5 inches Menlo member they all knew well. Vanetta was confused about why Nene was in the area, given the Hoovers-Menlo rivalry. Suddenly, Nene's car made a U-turn. Moments later, gunshots shattered Vanetta's windows. One of Vanetta's daughters was hit. Desperate for help, Vanetta spotted a patrol car a few blocks away and rushed toward it. A short time later, Nene called Vanetta, apologizing. He claimed he had mistaken their car for a Trey Hoover member's car. He advised her to change the color of her car for her safety. Nene accidentally left a voicemail on Vanetta's phone while speaking with another 6 feet 5 inches Menlo member. In the message, he admitted to the shooting and even mentioned where it took place. Vanetta and her niece later identified Nene in a photo lineup shown to them at the hospital. Days later, Nene called Vanetta again, trying to convince her to recant her statement. Vanetta, however, recorded the conversation. Nene even revealed that he had repainted his car to avoid being identified. Authorities later arrested Nene, and all the recorded calls were used in his trial. He has been in prison since 2007 and is eligible for parole in 2029. Bloody incident. December 18, 2006, around 10 a.m. A man named Jermaine was standing outside an apartment complex, talking with friends, including his close friend Deontay. After a few minutes, a man appeared and opened fire. Deontay was hit and tragically lost his life. Jermaine described the shooter but failed to identify him in a photo lineup. The apartment complex had surveillance cameras, and the car used in the shooting was seen driving up and leaving Adaff and Vermont, before returning shortly after. December 26th, a woman named Patricia was arrested on unrelated charges. The police questioned her, offering to reduce her sentence in exchange for information. She revealed that a man named Troy was the shooter and another man named Anthony was the driver in the December 18th shooting. December 27th, officers spotted the car from the surveillance footage in Menlo's territory. One of the men inside was Anthony. He was photographed and then released. January 3rd, police re-interviewed Patricia regarding her previous statements. She claimed she knew about the shooting because Troy and Anthony had discussed it in front of her. They allegedly said they went into Hoover turf to put in some work. She also told officers that Troy and Anthony had asked her to drive by the scene later to see what happened. Police traced the car's registration to Anthony. 2 days later, Anthony and Troy were arrested. Patricia testified against them in court. She originally faced 56 years for her previous crimes, but with her testimony, her sentence was reduced to 16 years. Troy was sentenced to 50 years to life. Anthony received 35 years to life. June 17, 2008. A 7-4 Hoover member named Kevin was under surveillance, suspected of being a key figure in the gang. His phone was tapped, and he was being investigated for multiple crimes. On June 17, 2008, Kevin and other Hoover members planned an attack on Menlo territory. Throughout the day, phone conversations detailed who would get the cars and who would bring the weapons. However, the shooting didn't go as planned. Their guns jammed, and the Menlo member they targeted escaped unharmed. These conversations were intercepted over the phone, providing clear evidence. All those involved were arrested, and police gathered additional information about previous robberies and shootings against Denver Lane members. A total of 66 intercepted calls were used as evidence in court. Kevin and Morgan were both sentenced to life in prison. December 14, 2011. This last case involves two separate incidents, both involving the 7-4 and 8 Trey Hoovers. On December 14, 2011, Quanisha watched her boyfriend, Miguel, back his truck out of their driveway. A Charger sped past, nearly hitting Miguel's truck. Miguel was heading to the corner store on 65th and Menlo, just a few houses away from his home, to pick up a friend who worked as a cashier. When Miguel arrived, he saw the same Charger again. Suddenly, gunshots rang out. Miguel ran inside the store for cover. When he stepped out moments later, he saw a man he knew lying on the curb, wounded. The victim died a week later. A few days after the shooting, a woman was sitting in her car in rolling 60s territory, waiting for a friend. She saw a Charger pull up and a man jump out, opening fire. She got a good look at the shooter and later identified him to the police. The Charger fled the scene but soon encountered police officers nearby. During the chase, the suspects threw objects out of the car. Eventually, the Charger crashed into a stop sign, and 3 men were arrested. Travis, 7-4 Hoover. Marquis, 8 Trey Hoover. Brian, 8 Trey Hoover. The Charger was registered to Travis. Both Quanisha and Miguel later identified Travis as the shooter in Menlo's turf. Sentencing. Travis was charged in 2 cases and sentenced to 75 years to life. Brian and Marquis were charged in the second case. Brian has been in prison since 2013 and is eligible for parole in 2027. Marquis is eligible for parole in 2023. Gang activity in South Central Los Angeles has its roots in a variety of factors dating to the 1950s, including post-World War II economic decline leading to joblessness and poverty, racial segregation of young African American men who were excluded from organizations such as the Boy Scouts, leading to the formation of black street clubs, and the waning of black nationalist organizations such as the Black Panther Party and the Black Power movement. Stanley Tookie Williams met Raymond Lee Washington in 1969, and the two decided to unite their local gang members from the west and east sides of South Central Los Angeles in order to battle neighboring street gangs. Most of the members were 17 years old. Williams, however, appears to discount the sometimes cited founding date of 1969 in his memoir, Blue Rage, Black Redemption. In his memoir, Williams also refuted claims that the group was a spin-off of the Black Panther Party or formed for a community agenda, writing that it depicted a fighting alliance against street gangs, nothing more, nothing less. Washington, who attended Fremont High School, was the leader of the East Side Crips, and Williams, who attended Washington High School, led the West Side Crips. Williams recalled that a blue bandana was first worn by Crips founding member Curtis Buddha Morrow, as a part of his color-coordinated clothing of blue Levi's, a blue shirt, and dark blue suspenders. A blue bandana was worn in tribute to Morrow after he was shot and killed on February 23, 1973. The color then became associated with Crips. By 1978, there were 45 Crip gangs, called sets, in Los Angeles. They were heavily involved in the production of PCP, marijuana, and amphetamines. On March 11, 1979, Williams, a member of the West Side Crips, was arrested for 4 murders, and on August 9, 1979, Washington was gunned down. Washington had been against Crip infighting, and after his death several Crip sets started fighting against each other. The Crips leadership was dismantled, prompting a deadly gang war between the rolling 60 neighborhood Crips and 8 Trey gangster Crips that led nearby Crip sets to choose sides and align themselves with either the neighborhood Crips or the gangster Crips, waging large-scale war in South Central and other cities. The East Coast Crips, from East Los Angeles, and the Hoover Crips directly severed their alliance after Washington's death. By 1980, the Crips were in turmoil, warring with the Bloods and against each other. As of 2015, the Crips gang consists of between approximately 30,000 and 35,000 members and 800 sets, active in 221 cities and 41 U.S. states. The states with the highest estimated number of Crip sets are California, Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. Members typically consist of young African American men, but can be white, Hispanic, Asian, and Pacific Islander. The gang also began to establish a presence in Canada in the early 1990s. Crip sets are active in the Canadian cities of Montreal and Toronto. In 1992, the LAPT estimated 15,742 Crips in 108 sets. Other source estimates were 30,000 to 35,000 in 600 sets in California. Crips have served in the United States Armed Forces and on military bases in the United States and abroad. The Crips became popular throughout southern Los Angeles as more youth gangs joined. At one point they outnumbered non-Crip gangs by 3-1, sparking disputes with non-Crip gangs, including the LA Brims, Athens Park Boys, the Bishops, the Drill Company, and the Denver Lanes. By 1971, the gang's notoriety had spread across Los Angeles. By 1971, a gang on Piru Street in Compton, California, known as the Piru Street Boys, formed and associated itself with the Crips as a set. After 2 years of peace, a feud began between the Pirates and the other Crip sets. It later turned violent as gang warfare ensued between former allies. This battle continued, and by 1973, the Pirates wanted to end the violence and called a meeting with other gangs targeted by the Crips. After a long discussion, the Pirates broke all connections to the Crips and started an organization that would later be called the Bloods, a street gang infamous for its rivalry with the Crips. Since then, other conflicts and feuds were started between many of the remaining Crip sets. As well as feuding with Bloods, they also fight each other. For example, the Rolling 60s Neighborhood Crips and 83 Gangster Crips have been rivals since 1979. In Watts, the Grape Street Crips and the P.J. Watts Crips have feuded so much that the P.J. Watts Crips even teamed up with a local Blood set, the Bounty Hunter Bloods, to fight the Grape Street Crips. In the mid-1990s, the Hoover Crips rivalries and wars with other Crip sets caused them to become independent and drop the Crip name, calling themselves the Hoover Criminals. The Bloods are the Crips' main rival. The Bloods initially formed to provide Piru Street gang members protection from the Crips. The rivalry started in the 1960s when Washington and other Crip members attacked Sylvester Scott and Benson Owens, two students at Centennial High School. After the incident, Scott formed the Pirates, while Owens established the West Piru Gang. In late 1972, several gangs that felt victimized by the Crips due to their escalating attacks joined the Pirates to create a new federation of non-Crip gangs that later became known as Bloods. Between 1972 and 1979, the rivalry between the Crips and Bloods grew, accounting for a majority of the gang-related murders in southern Los Angeles. Members of the Bloods and Crips occasionally fight each other and, as of 2010, are responsible for a significant portion of gang-related murders in Los Angeles. This rivalry is also believed to be behind the 2022 Sacramento shooting, where 6 people were killed.